If you have ever been made to feel small by someone's intellectual arrogance, or if you have ever felt the secret, uneasy pride of knowing more than others, there is a profound story that acts as a gentle corrective for the soul. It is a promise that you don't have to diminish your knowledge, but you can learn to hold it in a way that connects you rather than separates you from the world. We live in an age that worships expertise, an age where the loudest voice in the room is often mistaken for the wisest. In this climate, the pressure to know, to be right, to have the last word, can become a heavy burden. It can turn the joy of learning into a competitive sport and the beauty of knowledge into a weapon. This story is an antidote to that poison. It is the story of how a single question brought a great mind to its knees, not in shame, but in awe. It is an invitation to lay down the heavy shield of being an expert and to step into the vast, open and liberating field of being a lifelong student. This is a journey into the heart of a fundamental human struggle, the tension between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is the accumulation of facts, the building of a great library in the mind. Wisdom is the realization of how small that library is in the face of the infinite. A great many of us spend our lives building the library, polishing its shelves and guarding its doors. But true peace is only found when we step outside and are humbled by the vastness of the sky. This story is the key to that door, a gentle guide that leads us from the confinement of what we know into the wonder of what we don't. Let us travel back to a time and a place where scholars were revered. There lived a man whose mind was a wonder of the age. He had studied every science, memorized every classic, and could debate any topic with a breathtaking command of the facts. People did not call him by his name. They had given him a title that was both a compliment and a cage. They called him the walking library. And if we are to be honest, he had come to enjoy the title. His knowledge was a source of deep pride, a high fortress from which he looked down upon the simpler landscapes of other people's minds. He was not a cruel man, but a subtle air of superiority clung to him like a fine, expensive cloak. In the same region lived another man, known not for the breadth of his knowledge, but for the depth of his character. He was an arif, a person of profound spiritual insight, a man who had learned to read the book of his own heart, as well as others read the books on their shelves. One day, this wise man felt a calling to visit the walking library. He approached the great scholar's home and was granted an audience. The scholar received him with a polite but barely concealed air of condescension. "You may ask your question," he said, his tone implying that he had little time for the simple queries of a simple man. The wise man bowed his head slightly, his demeanor entirely free of challenge or ego. "Master," he began, his voice calm and clear, "I have a question about scale, if you would permit it. If we were to gather all the knowledge ever granted to all the prophets, from Adam to Muhammad, and collect it in one place, how would this immense treasure compare to the knowledge of God?" The scholar's face lit up. This was a grand theological question, a question worthy of his intellect. It allowed him to demonstrate the vastness of his conceptual thinking. He rose from his seat, a glint of excitement in his eye. He picked up a long stick that was leaning against the wall and strode out into the dusty courtyard. The wise man followed him in silence.
With swift, confident movements, the scholar used the tip of the stick to draw a massive circle in the dirt. It was as large a circle as he could make, a great, sweeping gesture that encompassed a huge patch of ground. Then he stepped into the center of this vast circle and, with the same stick, poked a single, tiny, almost invisible dot into the dirt. He turned to the wise man, a triumphant, professorial look on his face. "The analogy is, of course, inadequate," he began, "but it is the best I can do to illustrate the matter for you. If we were to imagine that this great circle represents the knowledge of God, though his knowledge is infinitely greater still, then all the knowledge of all the prophets combined would be, at most, the size of this single dot in the center. It was a brilliant answer, clear, powerful, and humbling in its cosmic scale. He had perfectly articulated the ineffable. He stood there, pleased with his demonstration, waiting for the wise man's nod of impressed satisfaction. The wise man looked at the great circle. He looked at the tiny dot, and then he looked at the scholar. He waited a moment, letting the silence settle. Then he asked his second question. "And, Master," he said, his voice still just as quiet and gentle as before, "your own knowledge, how much of that dot does it cover?" Silence. The world seemed to stop. The scholar stared at the dot, that tiny, insignificant speck that represented the pinnacle of all prophetic, divinely inspired wisdom, and he was being asked what fraction of that speck belonged to him. The stick fell from his hand. The grand circle he had drawn with such confidence a moment before suddenly transformed. It was no longer a diagram. It was a terrifying and holy mirror, reflecting his own infinitesimal reality. In that instant, the fortress of his intellectual pride, built over a lifetime of study and praise, crumbled into dust. The title of walking library felt like a fool's crown. He saw, with a clarity that was both shattering and liberating, that his vast ocean of knowledge was not even a single drop in the true ocean of what is. He did not answer the question. He could not. Instead, he looked at the wise man, and for the first time he truly saw him, not as a simple man, but as a messenger, a divine physician who had just administered a powerful and necessary cure. The scholar whispered to himself, "Do not look at the one who asked the question, but at the one who caused it to be asked." He bowed his head, no longer in condescension, but in profound, soul-shaking humility. And in the silence of the courtyard, in the presence of the circle and the dot, he asked God for forgiveness. This story is a perfect illustration of a profound spiritual truth. The gifts that God bestows upon us, be it knowledge, wealth, beauty, or power, are all tests. They are crossroads. One path leads to gratitude. The other path leads to arrogance. The scholar, blessed with the immense gift of a brilliant mind, had inadvertently wandered down the path of arrogance. The Quran warns us, surely Allah does not love the arrogant. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave a stunningly precise definition of this spiritual disease. He said that no one with even an atom's weight of arrogance in their heart will enter paradise. And then he defined arrogance with two simple markers: rejecting the truth and belittling other people. The scholar's story is a perfect map of this.
His default posture was to belittle others, and the wise man's second question was a truth so undeniable that he was forced to accept it, thereby breaking the fever of his pride. Intellectual arrogance is perhaps the most subtle and dangerous form of this disease. It is the signature sin of Satan, who, when commanded to bow to Adam, did not refuse out of simple disobedience, but out of a sense of superiority. "I am better than him. You created me from fire, and him from clay." This is the primordial whisper of the arrogant ego. "I know more. I am smarter. I am of a finer substance." The scholar, in his heart, had been whispering a version of this to himself for years. This is precisely why the greatest scholars in the Islamic tradition, men like Imam Al-Ghazali and Imam Rabbani, intellectual giants whose works are still studied 1,000 years later, were also profound Sufis. They understood that the pursuit of external knowledge, or ilm, without the parallel journey of internal purification, or tazkiyat al-nafs, was a recipe for disaster. They knew that the mind could become a palace of pride if the heart was not simultaneously being tilled into a garden of humility. They engaged in the rigorous discipline of Sufism to constantly remind themselves of the dot and to live in a state of awe before the circle. The beauty of this story lies in its gentle, compassionate resolution. The scholar is not shamed into oblivion. He is awakened into awe. His knowledge is not taken from him, but its context is radically and permanently altered. He can now hold his vast learning with a light and humble hand, knowing it is but a single grain of sand on an infinite shoreline. This is the true meaning of wisdom, not just knowing things, but knowing their true scale. Let us now bring the wisdom of the circle and the dot into the courtyard of our own souls. This is a quiet moment to recalibrate our own sense of scale, to find the freedom that the scholar discovered. Allow yourself to settle into a comfortable posture. Let your breath be a gentle tide, rising and falling, creating a space of calm within you. Bring to mind an area of your life where you feel knowledgeable, competent, even expert. It could be your profession, a skill you have honed for years, a complex hobby, or your understanding of a particular subject. See your knowledge in this area as a library that you have carefully and lovingly built. Feel the genuine and good satisfaction that comes from this accomplishment. There is nothing wrong with this feeling. It is a gift. Now, in your mind's eye, gently step outside of your library. Imagine you are standing in a vast, open space under a starry night sky. With a gentle movement of your hand, I want you to draw a vast circle around you. This circle represents everything that is known and everything that could be known. It is the totality of science, art, history, and divine mystery. It is the knowledge held in every star, every grain of sand, every human heart. Feel its immensity. Feel its silent, majestic, and overwhelming presence.
Now, look back at your own precious library. See it for what it is within this vast circle. It is not insignificant, but it is a part of something immeasurably larger. It is a single, beautiful constellation in an infinite cosmos. It is a single, perfect shell on a shore that has no end. Hold this feeling. Let the pride of ownership gently dissolve into the awe of participation. The burden of being the knower is lifted, replaced by the joy of being a seeker. The pressure to defend your library's walls gives way to an open-hearted desire to explore the vast landscape beyond them. Breathe into this feeling of humble expansiveness. This is the inner posture of true wisdom. The journey from arrogance to humility is not a journey of self-destruction, but of self-realization in its truest sense. It is the realization that our true self is not the small, defended fortress of our ego and its accomplishments. Our true self is the part of us that is connected to the vast, mysterious, and beautiful whole. The scholar in the story did not become smaller when he was humbled. He became infinitely larger because he traded the small kingdom of his own mind for citizenship in the entire cosmos. The world will continue to tempt us to build our fortresses, to defend our dots, but the path to joy, to connection, and to true, unshakable peace lies in the courage to step outside, to look at the vast circle with an open heart, and to whisper, with a sigh of profound relief, "I don't know." In that not knowing, all true knowledge begins.